Another method that you may have come across or will come across is a method called standard costing. Now, standard costing is simply a method or a system that analyzes cost performance in detail. So what a standard costing system will do is it will benchmark actual costs incurred versus what is attainable, right? What the ideal standard is. So it will benchmark actual versus what the budget or ideal standard is. And it will do a reconciliation between the actual costs that have been incurred relative to the benchmarks. In doing that, what it brings out is what we call favorable and unfavorable discrepancies or variance analysis. So if the benchmark was 100 in terms of the cost and the costs incurred are actually 110, our costs are higher. So we've got an adverse variance of 10. If the benchmark was 100, but the actual costs incurred, all things remaining constant, are 80, we've produced what we set out to produce, but at a lower cost, so we've got a positive variance of 20 in that respect. Let's do a quick example to dig into that particular methodology. In this example of variance analysis, we're just going to look at raw materials per unit, labor per unit. We're going to look at some of the variable costs, and we're going to look at some of the fixed costs. So for your raw materials, let us say the standard was 5. What we actually achieved in terms of the cost per each unit was 6. We have a variance of 1, and we've actually spent more than we expected to manufacture this item on raw materials, so it is an unfavorable or an adverse variance. On the labor side, the standard was 4 for each unit. The actual was 350, so we actually spent less comparatively on labor of 50 cents per unit. Therefore, we've got a favorable variance or a positive variance of 50 cents. On the variable costs, we had expected to spend 100,000, that was the standard. We actually spent 120,000, so we've got a 20,000 discrepancies. We've spent more than the actual standard had anticipated. We have an unfavorable variance of 20,000. On the fixed costs, the standard was 500,000, the actual is 500,000. There is no variance in that particular respect. With standard costing, to bring it all together, a reconciliation is then done between the actual costs incurred and the benchmark standard to identify all the variable and the unvariable discrepancies. And what the management team would do is they would follow up on the variable discrepancies and say, how can we reinforce these efficiencies? And on the unfavorable discrepancies, they would investigate as to why these occurred and seek to rectify those.